Welcome to Yahoo Finance Sports Report, a unique look at the business of sports, brought to you by Yahoo Finance and Yahoo Sports. I'm your host, Joe Pompliano, and I'm here to coach you through the financial game. Today, we've got Yahoo Sports senior reporter Henry Bushnell to talk about the FIFA Club World Cup and Playground Productions CEO Lindsay Barnett to discuss the business behind the backyard sports video game franchise. Let's huddle up and get right into it. We're kicking off this week with Pomp's Playbook, where I take a look at some of the biggest headlines in sports that you and your portfolio need to know. First up, the WNBA announced earlier this week that it will be expanding to 18 teams with new franchises in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Each franchise will pay a $250 million expansion fee, 5 times more than the $50 million that the Golden State Valkyries paid in 2023. The expansion teams will join the WNBA in the next 5 years, starting with Cleveland in 2028, Detroit in 2029, and Philadelphia in 2030. And each team will have an NBA ownership group. Here's Jess Smith, the president of the WNBA's most recent expansion team, the Golden State Valkyries, on the advantages of a shared ownership model between the Valkyries and the NBA's Golden State Warriors.
We think we're a great case study for how women's sports is taking place with shared ownership with the men's and women's team. That started with our branding when we had identified through data and some of my past experience that it would be a unique audience that was most drawn to build this, be all in, buy season tickets as that core fandom. And that's the result that we saw. But to cater to a new fan, to bring in a new fan, we needed to make sure that we also have our own staff.
Next up, F1 the movie starring Brad Pitt generated $144 million in global box office revenue for its opening weekend last week. F1, which was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer and Formula One superstar Lewis Hamilton, and directed by Joseph Kosinski of Top Gun: Maverick, finished at the top of the box office charts with $55.6 million in North America and $88.4 million internationally, marking a huge start for the Apple original film. The movie was also a huge milestone for Brad Pitt, as F1 had the biggest worldwide launch of any film in Brad Pitt's career. Now, while F1 the movie had a successful opening weekend, the film will still need to generate many more ticket sales to break even or even turn a profit on its $200 million budget and enormous marketing spend. However, the movie has an 83% certified fresh critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes, along with a 97% audience rating. And its early box office numbers mean it's already bigger than the 2013 F1 movie Rush and significantly outpacing the 2019 hit Ford vs. Ferrari. Last up, soccer megastar Cristiano Ronaldo signed a jaw-dropping 2-year, $675 million contract extension with Al Nassr to stay in the Saudi Pro League. Ronaldo, who initially joined Al Nassr on a $225 million annual contract in 2022, will see his player salary increase by 9% to $245 million per year. But that's really just the start. According to The Sun, Ronaldo's extension also contains a ridiculous amount of bonuses, including a 15% ownership stake in Al Nassr worth $45 million, a $33 million signing bonus that goes up to $52 million if he accepts the second-year player option in the deal, $82 million in promised sponsorship deals from Al Nassr, and an $11 million bonus if Al Nassr wins the Saudi Pro League. The 40-year-old will also get free access to a private jet and a 16-person team of full-time employees that includes drivers, chefs, housekeepers, and security guards. Now, time will tell if this contract ends up being worth the cost, but then again, I don't think Al Nassr and Saudi Arabia really care. This week, I'm joined by Yahoo Sports senior reporter Henry Bushnell to discuss the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup taking place across the U.S. Let's start with something that seems a little bit off the radar. It just came out, was Cristiano Ronaldo's new contract, and more specifically, the numbers are crazy. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that, but what do you think about where the Saudi Pro League is and what this means for that league overall?
What's fascinating in the context of what we saw last night, actually, we're recording this on Tuesday. On Monday night, Al Hilal, not Ronaldo's team, but another team from the Saudi Pro League, upset Manchester City at the Club World Cup, right? So it's a fascinating stage of that project, and it's clear that these top teams are at a level that they certainly weren't at a few years ago, and that MLS is nowhere close to, and that a lot of the other non-European leagues are nowhere close to. It's a lot of money. It's not 100% worth that money from a soccer perspective. But both on the field and off the field, they're clearly lifting the brand of the Saudi League right now.
Yeah, they seem comfortable with spending whatever amount of money it takes to certainly level the playing field. So I get it. But let's talk Club World Cup. Now, this tournament has been highly anticipated for a number of years now. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about it before it's launched. But now that we're sort of moving through the month-long tournament, what is your overall kind of expectation and thoughts of where it has gone so far?
I think it's been okay. there were a lot of fears going in that tickets weren't selling. I don't think FIFA did a very good job of capturing the casual US sports fan market. But what's really lifted this tournament is how much both the teams and the fans from especially South America, but elsewhere on the world, especially countries who have big expat populations, or the diasporas in the United States, that has really brought the tournament to life. Not only because those fans have bought tickets and filled halves of stadiums in a lot of cases, but because of the passion they bring, right? And without that, some of these atmospheres would be pretty dull. And we know that there hasn't been that much enthusiasm in Europe, whether it's people watching on TV or traveling here for it. So I think that has, I don't want to say saved the tournament, because what saved the tournament was the broadcast deal with DAZN. And I think we'll see that evolve in future editions. But what has really brought it to life to a sufficient extent, I'd say, is that fandom that's followed the South American teams and others.
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about the ticket sales. I think it was at 57% capacity for the opening rounds, which I imagine, if we looked at some of their internal documents, is a little bit lower than they would have expected or at least hoped for. But overall, the weather has certainly played a part in that. I mean, some of the stadiums are indoors, of course, and didn't get great ticket sales regardless, but there's been some weather issues. It's been extremely hot. There were some infrastructure or security problems around Hard Rock Stadium as well. How do you think that this tournament serves as sort of like a testing ground for the actual World Cup come next summer?
It does, and that's certainly how it's been viewed internally at FIFA and everybody around this tournament, and various other partners and stakeholders as well. It's not a test run in that there will be so much more fan interest around next summer, and it's difficult to test your security protocols when you've only got 20,000 people in a stadium versus when that stadium is full and when a lot more people are, and not just full, but there are 100,000 people who are also in the city who don't have tickets and are just there for the party. So it's a lot different from that perspective, but they're certainly using this to trial various procedures that will be in place next summer.
And lastly, I would love to just get your opinion on the state of the U.S. men's national team right now.
There's been a weird apathy around the team based on they lost 2 games in March. They lost 2 friendlies leading into this Gold Cup. A lot of guys are either resting or not here for other reasons. So they're missing 7 to 10 kind of like core pieces of this team. So it's a strange spot to be at a year out from the World Cup when you'd hope that hype is kind of starting to build. But they've, they won a dramatic game on Sunday in their quarterfinal. They're expected to win tomorrow. They'll probably get to a final, likely against Mexico. And that's kind of what they needed. Even if a lot of these guys who are playing right now aren't going to be the starters 12 months from now at the World Cup, they just needed some good vibes. And that's kind of what they're getting right now. So I think that's kind of the biggest impact of this ongoing Gold Cup right now.
Yeah, it feels like there's so many different things going on between the Gold Cup and the Club World Cup. We obviously just had the Champions League. I think for the average American sports fan, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to keep up with. But to your point, that's where FIFA can come in and make a difference when it comes to the marketing and things like that. But we'll see how it goes. Henry, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, we've got to take a quick break, but coming up, I've got Playground Productions CEO Lindsay Barnett joining the show to talk about the relaunch of the iconic video game Backyard Baseball. Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Sports Report. I'm your host, Joe Pompliano. We've made it to the one-on-one, a conversation where I get to break down news and sports with a key player in the industry. This week, we're talking to Playground Productions CEO Lindsay Barnett. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining the show today. Now, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to backyard sports and specifically backyard baseball, but I would love to just get an understanding of what set you down this path to acquire the rights to backyard sports.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, first of all. So this was actually these games were my favorites growing up. I was a very sporty little girl in Chicago, and this was the game that made me fall in love with baseball and football. I was already in love with basketball, given the '90s of Chicago. But yeah, really loved these games, and that's what really set me on the path.
What were you doing before this?
I was actually an elementary school teacher. So I had studied film and animation undergrad, and then I got my master's in elementary teaching, but I specialized in digital media. And so I hoped that one day I was going to be making children's content. Uh, and I thought it was going to be soon after I graduated. And then I loved student teaching, and I took an 8-year path away from actual content creation, and wound up teaching elementary school. And I absolutely loved it. And then it was actually during COVID, no one signed up to be a remote teacher, that all of this kind of started to rush back, where I was looking for great content for kids, and especially great games that they could be playing on their computers. And this franchise was nowhere to be found.
So talk me through this acquisition process, because obviously you had the idea, right? You're looking to get some content. You loved the game, so you already had some familiarity with it. But you formed this company, and then how do you go about actually acquiring the rights to the games and the franchise?
Well, so this was actually quite a difficult one to find, because it wasn't they hadn't had a game come out in almost a decade when I started looking for it. And so I did the normal process of, checking, first of all, searching on Google, and then, asking IP lawyers, and it was not findable. So what I wound up doing was, one of the lawyers said, "Hey, Lindsay, you could hire a private investigator to track the rights down." And that just sounded like a great COVID project. And so I was like, let's do that. And 6 months later, they came back, found who had the rights, and it began really a conversation of how we could bring this franchise back in a meaningful way. And those 2.5 years all really became thinking about how to do that the right way.
That's amazing. Private investigator to acquire the rights to the franchise. I love it. All right, talk to me
That
about the
wasn't like a
partnership that.
board teacher.
Yeah, exactly. Teacher, private investigator, now production company CEO. I love it. Talk to me about the partnership with MLB. Obviously, you have to get sort of their sign off. You have to work with the players that were in the game previously, all of which I guess are retired at this point. And so you can't just go through the Players Association, right? Most people would understand, if you want the rights to the players, you just go negotiate a deal with the Players Association. But this was sort of a unique instance where you probably had to go to the players specifically and individually. So talk to me just about how the partnership with MLB came about, but also how you've been able to acquire the rights and work with the players on licensing deals as well.
Well, the MLB has been an incredible partner, and it really just started incredibly organically when we announced that the brand was returning last August. Um, the MLB reached out, and we basically started having this conversation about bringing back the 2001 game and seeing if we could get them to be a part of it. And they just made it such an easy process for us, because we have a very shared goal, which is, this is a true accessible sports and baseball game. It is actually the most accessible baseball game that's ever been on the market. Simple point and click. They have a T-ball mode, which is for the youngest players. They have a hard mode for people who might have grown up with it, and now could play it again now. And so really it covered the bases. No pun intended, but I can't help it now. Uh, and so, yeah, they just made it to be a really easy experience to work with them. And we wanted to get more people to love baseball and back into the game, whether it was through video gaming or whether it was through the actual MLB. And I think a lot of people are heading out to stadiums now.
And what characters or players were you able to get to participate in this version of the game compared to 2001?
So we were able to get 28 out of the 31 players. And I was just so excited, because honestly, we did have to go player by player for the majority of them. Some of them are in the retiring players union, but this became its own almost private investigator situation, Although we didn't have to do that. We wound up hiring an awesome guy named Zach Oliver to help track people down. But it really was like, how am I going to get in touch with Derek Jeter? And how am I going to get in touch with A-Rod? And we did. We wound up like going through the process. And what we found out was more often than not, the players just had a super love for the game when they were in it. Some of them had never played it and now want to play it because they're, retired. They want to show it to their kids or their grandkids. But there was like a real love for this franchise and everybody was excited to see it coming back.
So where is the rollout of Backyard Baseball specifically at right now? I know that it came out, I think, as a premium iOS game, but what does the timeline look like for some other versions of it?
Yeah, so actually last October, October 10th, which was the anniversary of the Backyard Baseball 1997 drop back in 28 years ago, we dropped it on the computer on Steam. And then we dropped soccer on Steam, Backyard Soccer 1998. And then we basically, the process of it has actually been quite complicated because we don't have the source code. So we have been reverse engineering and CD-ROM hacking to make them playable on modern devices, which is why the computer games came out first, because that was the same one-to-one device that it came out on in the past. It took us a little bit longer to actually reverse engineer and make it possible on mobile. And then through that process, we actually discovered new technology to be able to make it playable on PlayStation and on Nintendo Switch. So it has really been a process, but we're very open with our fans, and we are telling them we're trying to make it playable on as many devices as possible, and we have limitations, but we're building in the open and we're trying. And so, yeah, that has been the process so far. And now Backyard Baseball 2001 will come out on Steam and on mobile devices.
So we've got everything in this story now. We got teacher, private investigators, individual licensing deals, and of course now we're re-engineering code. So that's
Yes.
fantastic. But what other versions are we going to be seeing? Other games from the Backyard Sports franchise, whether it's football, soccer, hockey, basketball, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so Backyard Football 1999 is coming back as well. Backyard Basketball 2001. Backyard Hockey 2002. We have 6 retro games total that are coming back and all to modern devices. All 6 of those will be back by the end of this year. And then we're also in production on a brand new game that we're building from the ground up. So very excited for that, but that'll come out next year. But yeah, lots of exciting things that are in the pipeline. And the retro games have been such a great way to kind of bring back the backyard sports community. And we're definitely noticing people come back quickly and start introducing it to the next generation too, which is so fun for teacher Lindsay.
Absolutely. So you hinted at it there for a second when you talked about a new game that's coming out, but I'm curious just of like the 30,000-foot view. When you think about Playground Productions, the company that you started and you run, how do you think about the future of that business outside of the background baseball and football and stuff like that?
Yeah, so, we're really inventing a playbook in some ways, which is very exciting for us because we have a big piece of IP that's, independently operated. And so we have a lot of flexibility on how we bring things to market, and we're publishing all of these retro titles. And so it's actually quite exciting for us because we're learning a lot, but we're able to do it with the integrity that we all share on our team, which is making sure that we're making great children's family content. And we can, set our own kinds of standards. And for example, for that, I made a very conscious choice that the retro games would not have ads or microtransactions in them. And perhaps if we were not the publisher on that, or we're not operating that, someone would have made a different choice because that's not really the model for some modern games, especially on the phone. But we really wanted to make sure that we were doing this with integrity. It wasn't predatory and feeling like you have to buy the win, or you're going to pop up an ad that wasn't appropriate for a kid, or some parent didn't want that ad to be shown. And so those are some of the choices that we're able to make because of how we are doing things.
Amazing. This is so incredibly cool. And I know a lot of people have to be excited to be able to relive some of their childhood nostalgia. But Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
The clock is winding down here, but we have just enough time for some final buzz. So let's talk about the money and business of Wimbledon. The 138th edition of Wimbledon started earlier this week, and the oldest Grand Slam in tennis is a massive economic engine. Wimbledon will have a record $73 million in prize money up for grabs this year, a 7% increase from 2024. The tournament has also awarded equal prize money to both men's and women's competitors since 2007. So each singles champion this year will earn $4.1 million, up 11% from last year. By comparison, Wimbledon has the second highest prize pool of the Grand Slam events, behind the US Open, which paid out $75 million to players in 2024, but ahead of the Australian Open and French Open, which each paid out $64 million earlier this year. Now, while Wimbledon's host, the highly exclusive All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club in London, only has about 350 full-time members, their Grand Slam event is a massive revenue driver, to put it lightly. In 2024, Wimbledon generated $549 million in revenue and nearly $75 million in profit at a 14% margin. Of that revenue, Wimbledon makes over half of its money from global broadcast rights, including its current 12-year deal with ESPN and ABC in the United States. And Wimbledon drives about a third of its revenue from ticket sales and sponsorships, as well as another 12% from concessions and merchandise. However, like the Masters at Augusta National Golf Club, Wimbledon leaves tens of millions of dollars on the table every year by selling thousands of affordable tickets and limiting its sponsorship inventory to protect its brand. In fact, when you're watching Wimbledon matches over the next 2 weeks, take a look at the grass courts. Most sponsor logos are painted black and nearly invisible to the naked eye, and even the white painted logos on center court and court number 1 can barely be seen. But while the tournament can easily make more money, some traditions are priceless when it comes to Wimbledon. We're all out of time, so it's officially game over for this week. Thank you so much to Henry, Lindsay, and all of you for joining us. Please make sure to scan the QR code below to follow Yahoo Finance Podcast for more videos and expert insights, and catch us every Friday wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Joe Pompliano. See you next time.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.